All right, everybody. Thank you again so much for being here. My name's Paul Sims. I'm speaking to you from home in London. I would love to know where you guys are dialing in from. I can see my colleague Lucy has already said hello from Japan, and a few people are introducing themselves in the chat window. If you haven't done already, please say hello. This conversation is going to be a conversation. Let's not make it one way, let's make it multi ways. Let's all answer the questions that we're going to hear today. And I think it's going to be a marvelous session. It's one that I have been looking forward to for some time. For multiple reasons. Firstly, because of course it's a fascinating topic, but secondly, this has ended up being one of the more popular webinars that we've done recently. I think we've got nearly 1,000 people signed up, and I can see already a large number of people listening in the room. Thank you guys for being here on time, present with us. It's going to be a great session. It's called AI from Hype to Results. And as you can imagine, that resonates with many of you. It's about boosting performance, navigating integration of technology and people, and of course, the different IT systems that we have, and of course, securing that buy-in, getting senior leadership, getting across the width of the organization to be on the same page. Look at that, 100, nearly 100 of you have introduced yourself already. Keep that going. And just a quick word about why. I mean, these days, it feels you just obviously can't move in pharma without bumping into another AI slogan, another AI solution, promising, of course, to revolutionize everything. And it does require some nuance and some resilience simply to be able to see the wood from the trees, right? But the actual reality can be measured in perhaps more traditional ways. Are we engaging with customers? Are we seeing impact? Are we driving patient outcomes? And those are the things that we're going to be looking at today. This webinar is about getting real, focusing on what actually works, spotlighting tangible results. It's also going to take a little side look at the regulatory environment, because we all know that this historically has been an unregulated area, but that is changing fast. We need to be absolutely sure. It amazes me that data regulation such as GDPR in Europe was so on the tip of everyone's tongues and so important to our organizations, yet somehow the same thing hasn't happened with the imminent AI regulation. And ironically, the penalties are just as severe, if not more so, if we get it wrong. So that is very important as well. What I'm going to do, actually, we have a lot of poll questions today. I have a lot of stuff. As I said, I want this to be a dialogue. So before I even introduce everybody, I'm going to get the first poll question up and running. So if you have a look at this, it's a two-parter, should be appearing on your screen in just a second. And while I'm introducing everyone, perhaps you can have a go at those two questions. Zoom's a little bit slow these days, so it takes a while to appear. I think it's just arrived on your screen now. First one is, what's pharma's biggest AI adoption hurdle? And I've got quite a few different options you can choose from there, including one at the bottom that says there are no real hurdles. And the second question is, what kind of insight would most improve the link between strategy, i.e. what we want, and execution, what we deliver in your organization? So two-part question there. I'll let you get on with that while I introduce. You'll be pleased to know the far more attractive and far more intelligent people than me that are joining for today's session. So Christine joins us from Advance AI. A little word for Advance AI. These guys are trailblazing at the moment. They're doing fantastically well as a real partner for pharma. And I have to say thank you to the whole Advance AI team for which this webinar wouldn't even be happening. Great team to work with. And thank you so much, Christine, for being part of this. She's got 20 years, more than 20 years in healthcare, pharma, and medtech. And she's the SVP of Client Relations and looks after the Americas region there. She's a board member at the Healthcare Business Women's Association. Very apt. It's International Women's Day on Saturday, and an advisor at the George Washington University. Thank you so much for being here, Christine. Diana is Senior Director of Commercial Excellence at Europe and Canada. She's got more than 15 years in pharma. She specializes in marketing operations, business intelligence, and commercial excellence. And so far in the conversations we've had preparing for this, she has been very insightful indeed. She optimizes processes, stakeholder engagement, and of course, has been very hands-on in AI implementations of late. And I'm very excited to find out what she has to say today. Sato is our resident regulatory pro. She is Chief Privacy Officer at Privanotch, and She is a leader in AI governance, ethics, and regulatory compliance. She specializes in AI risk assessment, data privacy, compliance. She is also an expert in GDPR as well. We're going to hear more about the EU AI Act and a flavor of some other things that are coming from around the world as well. And she's a certified AI governance professional, contributing to actually the governance standards through the IAPP. Marvelous that you could take your time to join us here to do Saito. Louis is a longer friend in pharma, but we actually have only recently reconnected around this webinar. Really pleased. We all know how well Lilly as an organization is doing at the moment, but most interestingly, I think Louis is going to peel back the curtain on some of the real innovation work and what it takes to get that innovation going in a major organization like Lilly. As you can see, he's Director of Omnichannel Engagement Strategy and Operations, but I think that is a mere shadow of what his job title really covers. He's got more than 20 years experience across US, China, Japan, Europe. He has a lot of experience in integrating technology, data, digital platforms, customer insights to drive patient and HCP interactions. So thank you, Louis, for being here. And last but most certainly not least is Derek. Derek is National Sales Director at Novartis in the UK. And I don't want to, burst your bubble. Oh, you've turned on your cameras. Isn't that nice? I wasn't expecting that just yet, but it's lovely to see you all. Derek was a bit of a skeptic, if you don't mind me saying, but perhaps has. Well, I'll let him tell you his story in a moment. But he's got 17 years as a leader in sales, marketing, market access, medical affairs, and is doing some really interesting things in the UK with NHS and NHS collaborations, PhD in biochemistry. The list goes on. As you can tell, we have a wonderful panel. I hope you agree with that. Right, before I show the results of the poll questions, you might remember that you actually did a couple of polls when you signed up for this webinar in the first place. Why don't we have a look at the results? Okay, so first question was this. What do you believe, and I can't actually see the question myself, all my screen is full of so many windows, but hopefully you can read. I think it's the biggest challenge in scaling AI from pilot to global implementation. Let's have a look at the results. 20.9% is navigating compliance with global. So regulation hit the top spot. You'll be pleased to know, Saito, that you're a popular person already before we even begin. The next one is this, aligning teams and stakeholders to a global AI strategy, so internal alignment. In third place is ensuring consistent high-quality data availability, perhaps no surprise. So those were the top three slots, and then everything else, a smaller number, as you can see from the bullet points here. 12.5% of people saying, I haven't got any clue, no idea whatsoever. I thought that was interesting. And we also asked a second question, which was this. What would be your top priorities from selecting an AI vendor to go from strategy to execution? And here we had a very clear winner with nearly half of the results. And anyone want to guess? Anyone want to guess? It was this, proven expertise in pharma healthcare and evidence of success. That shows you that this hype theme of today's webinar is a very apt one. People want to go beyond the hype and the shiny toys and to the proven expertise and evidence. So that's interesting. Second place was knowledge of regulations. Again, lots of people on your side of the equation here, Saito. Strong data security as well. And interestingly, flexibility to tailor solutions to specific business needs. And this one I thought was really interesting. Clear ROI and cost effectiveness right down in fourth place, only 8%. Interesting, eh? So that is the results of what we talked about before. Let's have a look at the results of what we've just done now. I can see nearly everybody has replied to this survey now. I'm going to end that. We'll have a quick look at the results when it allows me to. Come on, Zoom. Get going, get going. Talk amongst yourselves. Okay, here we go. Share results. Can everyone see this? Doesn't always work these days. We have the winner with a quarter is compliance and regulatory. Wow, everyone is really interested. 23% of people saying internal resistance as its biggest hurdle. So that's a close second place. And then I think in third was scaling beyond a pilot. Of course, I know you want to tick every single option when I answer these questions. I'm very mean to you. I'm only letting you choose one, but that gives us the most interesting data. Second part, what kind of insight would most improve the link between strategy and execution? Nearly half of people said understanding what is driving changes in HCP behavior in real time. Okay, right, we're going to talk about that. Interesting. Nearly a third of people, of course, saying real-time data linking field activity back to strategic goals, which is not too dissimilar from that either. Okay, so we want real time, we want up to date, and I think that's really, really interesting. Okay, I'm going to get rid of my slides. The panel has already come to sit with me, which is wonderful. So let's go to them. And by the way, I want to see that chat window on fire today. I want to see your comments, thoughts, and ideas. So do not be shy. This is your chance. And I want people to be answering the question as well in that chat window. I will also issue a disclaimer. You may have seen it on the slides just now. Every one of our panelists is speaking from a personal point of view. They are not necessarily representing that of their companies. We want this to be a safe space conversation, so please respect that. And finally, yes, this is being recorded. You don't have to ask me afterwards. I will send it to you, so it'll be in your inbox in a couple of days. Right, panel, thanks for being patient while I went through all of that. The challenge. What is the AI promises transformation, right? But so many of us are hesitating. So many of us don't believe that we should rock the boat when we don't have to. So many of us want to be fast followers rather than leaders. So just give me a little sense of that fearfulness and the challenges that you feel that you're facing in your organizations. You guys have been quite early trailblazers here. So tell us about it from your perspective. Diana, Derek, and Louis, I'm particularly looking at you. Who wants to go first?
Yeah, happy to go first.
Thank you, Dan.
So I was actually, you mentioned like one of the highest thing was choose a vendor for proven expertise and track record. Well, when we embarked like doing these kind of things, we actually didn't look for that because especially in the AI stuff, lots is new, but we wanted really like you look for somebody to partner, and then actually you uncover things where you can add value. And I think that is the nice thing if you really start doing it early, because you just not just adopt things. And that's also what I'm uncovering now. Like we don't have a full package, here it is, but actually embarking on a journey, for me, AI was also something I didn't use, but I find out now daily, like new things it can bring to our business. And of course, also that full other side with the challenges, with bringing people along, regulations. I have also experienced those things, but maybe that's more something, I know, Derek, you experience it in the field, so maybe that's more on your side to talk about.
Well, just before we move to Derek, Diana, just another, if we can just spend a little longer with you,
Yeah.
just tell us a little bit more about the cultural aspect of trying to introduce AI and what it took for you to actually be a leader in this space.
So I think the main thing, and maybe also something I would do more of in the future, my learnings, is you really have to do a lot of stakeholder management on all levels in the organization, and especially like with something like this is new. I found like going on this journey, have a lot of conversation, more understanding myself, and then when you go on a journey with people, they adopt it, and then it feels a little bit, oh, you're there, but then the next one you actually start from scratch. And I think that is the thing we will be, I will experience probably the coming year still, that you always, when you go to the next person, it's actually starting from scratch again.
Cool. Thank you, Diana. I appreciate your perspective. Derek, you can go next, or Louis, if you prefer.
Yeah, I'm happy to, Paul. And Diana raises a lot of really valid points around perhaps some of the challenges we faced, implementing AI in our organization. I think to say that I'm a leader in AI adoption. I feel a little bit of a fraud in that regard. I certainly don't feel like I'm an expert in AI. I think I've just taken a really healthy dose of curiosity, a little bit of a growth mindset in terms of adopting new ways of working, but with a very healthy dose of skepticism as well around whether it truly would add value. And I think what I've experienced and what my team have experienced is that it's probably adding efficiency to the way in which we work. We've been using AI as a coaching tool. We've been using it as a development tool, and we ask a lot of first line managers now in our organization and in our business. We have ever expanding roles, ever expanding responsibilities, and therefore I think what we've observed is that AI has enabled us to be more efficient in our roles, and really has helped us make some pretty good business decisions, whether it has reinforced business decisions that we have made in the past or drove new business decisions that we will make in the future in terms of investment into our field force. So I certainly feel as if I came from a position of is this really going to add value, to a position of it continues to add value where I didn't expect it to appear, and even today on one of our sales town halls, we were still talking about insights from AI in terms of in-field coaching. So yeah, it keeps appearing and providing insights in places and times that I didn't expect it to. Fully agree with Diana as well. Stakeholder management within an organization is hugely important, whether it be your marketing teams from a brand perspective, your training departments, legal, compliance, regulatory. You need to navigate all of these stakeholders because there are some challenges that you need to overcome along the way, and I'm sure we'll talk more about those.
Thank you. Before we go to Lewis, I noticed that some people in the chat are writing to just hosts and panelists, which is lovely. I'm loving seeing what you're writing, but do change that little blue drop-down box to everyone so that we can all hear what you have to say. Louis, I really want to hear your opinion on this. We had a great chat yesterday about some of the challenges at Lilly. So tell us.
Thank you very much. Picking up on what Diana said, how to introduce AI, I think if we think about the big boost of Gen AI, ChatGPT, all of a sudden, I think AI introduced itself within all of the companies, right? It kind of just all of a sudden was there. If we think specifically about this area, we're touching two key traditionally challenging stakeholders for change. One is all of the folks within compliance, legal, etc., and then the sales organization. So I think those are two traditionally very, very big entities that you really have to work with very well. We mentioned it yesterday. I would say think big. Wow, what is the potential of this? You really need to believe what this can bring to the table. But then start small. And start small is within a very, very small set of, whether it's within a small affiliate, a selected group of individuals, and also keep the folks that you want, the stakeholders that you have to manage, a small group. Because the more stakeholders we bring in, the more challenging and different opinions. So in our particular case, we did this in a certain geography. We worked with our regional ethics and compliance. From there, we went to regional data privacy officer. You kind of, like the Chinese proverb, how do you eat an elephant? You take bite by bite, right? So we didn't move on to the next stakeholder until we got a given key stakeholder fully on board, and we would take that stakeholder's output to the next one. And that sort of builds confidence as you move along your stakeholders. I also would say that we're lucky to have this come down as a corporate mandate in terms of find places to apply AI. And I think I saw in one of the earlier polls that you showed as a challenge, the lack of a global AI strategy. I think I understand the comment, but I would flip it the other way around. Do we really need a global AI strategy, or what we need is a strategy, whether it's a customer engagement strategy, whether it's a productivity strategy, and then you look at AI as an enabler for those strategies. We're all about customizing and personalizing content as marketeers. Okay, that's the strategy. How can AI come in and enable that strategy? So I think if you figure out what your problem statement is and how AI can help, then it simplifies the conversation with the stakeholders, because you're able to show this tool does this, this, and this, and then helps us with that output. Looking at the Salesforce, because I think that's a big part of this, I would actually say that navigating legal, ethics, data privacy, etc., wasn't that challenging. I mean, at the end of the day, the regulations are what they are. What you can and what you cannot do, and what you need to put in place sits there. It's then when you hit the folks that actually need to use this or benefit from it. In this particular case, AI doesn't necessarily have to be mentioned that much at the start, right? What we need to ask folks, and that's how we did it, is listen, guys, if you have the opportunity to have data that tells you what is happening in your calls on a regular basis, so that you can use that data personally in a safe space to digest and adjust how you're approaching it, would you want that? Without actually saying what is going to power those insights in that data. At the end of the day, if the sales rep buys into that concept, then the AI is a little bit more of a parallel element to all of it. Right? It's the engine where you then have to tell folks, trust how it digests the data and provides it to you. But first, by positioning it as something that brings value, irrespective of how you get to those outcomes, that was very much a first step for us. And then AI is just, how it happens, but not necessarily the day-to-day in and outs of what you're doing with the data.
Thank you, Louis. I really appreciate that. And I think you're going to give us a lot of insights today. In fact, all of you are. I can see a lot of people in the chat window asking for specific examples, solutions, and what we're actually aiming for with AI. I promise you we will be getting to that in this conversation. Do not go anywhere. We are going to be talking about that. Before we go any further, though, I do want Christine, who gets to see across many different clients, to just have a word on this challenges question and where you see the greatest pain at the current around your current clients, and where you obviously want to go and add solutions.
Yeah, I think the other panelists hit the nail on the head in terms of the challenge with either not having any access to the quality of what's happening in the field. When you look at pharmaceutical companies spending so much money putting that resource out into the field, marketing teams spending so much money on those campaigns, to know if it's delivered on a continuous real-time basis is really the gap that we're seeing. And we'll in further discussion go on to talk about how we might be able to fill that gap.
Okay. Now, we're going to go to Sato in just a second, but just before we do, let's just have a quick word from the panel on particularly something that really came stronger than I expected in those opening polls, which was the compliance and regulatory pressure. Just a quick word from each of you on how much that really is an issue for you in your own organizations. Is it top of the tree, or is it actually something that people are overlooking at the moment? Just give us a quick backgrounder before we go to the expert. Diana, do you want to start again?
Yeah, definitely a topic you have to keep an eye on, and you have to partner internally in your company with privacy people, legal people, because without that, not possible. And I think maybe to the point a little bit with Louis, when you go to the next stages, even in Europe, I think with works councils, you again and again have that same discussion. It's not like you fix it once, but you will encounter it multiple times. So you have to keep that on your radar.
Yeah, I agree, Diane. I think to be fair, I think we make ethics, compliance, and those folks a bit more of an issue than they really are. I do believe it's how you engage with them, right? If you take to them a solution, or you email them a handful of slides and say, reflect on this, come back to us, yes or no. I mean, if I was sitting on the other side, I would probably say no as well. If you start working with them right at the beginning on the problem statement, what it is that you want to solve, what are the different ways you can get there? So use them as a sounding board, because most of these folks have been in the business side. Most of them have had to work with customers and engage, use them as a sounding board. And ultimately, you will get to the solution together. Both sides might compromise, but I tend to see that working with them as partners rather than folks that sign off on something is rarely the best way. The other thing that I would highlight, Paul, on this is there's a data privacy. I mean, nobody wants to end up in jail and with a box of chocolates and cool pajamas, right? We all want to do this correctly. So I think whether it's a data privacy officer, you hit all of those tabs. What I think, and I'm looking at the chat, that doesn't come up, and we undermine that, is the need for your info security guys to assess what is on the other side. How does the technology, whether you're buying software as a service or something like that, how does, in this particular case, how does Advance AI, their technology, their infrastructure and architecture, how does that take care of our data when it gets processed? So you'll probably see that you will navigate relatively okay through ethics, compliance, and data privacy, because again, the framework is what it is. You have to work within that. It takes a significant amount of time then on the info security side. And what I've noticed is some projects don't go forward because a lot of the AI vendors are startups. They don't have the size, the infrastructure, the insurance capabilities, etc., to guarantee that the expertise and the knowledge that those three guys bring to the table can suffice for an organization that's been around for 140 years. And that's where sometimes things fall apart, because the data you have on this side is extremely precious to all of us, and you're not willing to run the risk of flowing that data through a startup's systems and infrastructure, because you don't know what's going to happen at the end of the day. And that's where I think most of the conversations and most of the time gets taken, not necessarily with ethics, compliance, and data privacy.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure everyone wants to come in on this question, but I do want to move it on. We are, believe it or not, almost at past already. Some of you will have seen I've put a little poll question about impact up. I'm going to hold that open for just 5 more seconds. So get your final answers in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much. A little flurry of responses there, and I'll show those results. One of the reasons why I wanted to get that poll done and get you in the results is because I'm going to ask another one about regulatory specifically while Sato is going to show us a couple of slides. So Sato, do you want to get yourself ready to talk through that? I will, in the meantime, just share the results of this latest poll about impact. So the first question, how does your organization currently measure the effectiveness? The answers should have just appeared. 28% of people saying some automation, but insights are slow or incomplete. Possibly no surprise that we have a bit of a normal distribution there. And then the second question, how could continuous AI real-time insights most impact your field execution? Nearly 2/5 of people saying more precise adjustments and predictive analytics for marketing strategy in response to HCP behavior, back to that real-time precise adjustments. So there's a clear mandate for that from the audience. Very interesting. Thank you so much. Sato, I would love to hear what you've got to say.
Yeah, and actually, Louis gave a really nice segue there, talking about information security, because when you talk about regulatory compliance, it often goes forgotten about, and because it's not directly hinged on regulation, but actually there's a huge overlap between data privacy requirements and information security. So it's very important that you assess the risk in both cases, along with ethical and legal. And interestingly, when you're not if you're looking at an organization that doesn't have strong information security controls, you're actually potentially in breach of data privacy. And then you're also potentially in breach of ethics space. So things like human rights as well, because the right to privacy is also one of those. So they are all actually connected. And it is really important that you consider all AI risk, not just, a few of them, ethics and legal, reputational, they come up quite a lot. But yes, Louis, 100% information security is just as important. So now looking at just US and EU regulation in general in this space, AI, we all know about the EU AI Act. That is typically held as the most comprehensive AI regulation we have in the world. It is extraterrestrial, so you don't have to be based in the EU to be caught by it. The minute you have a customer or you operate in that market, you are caught by that regulation, have to comply with it. The EU fairly recently announced that they're updating the Product Liability Directive. So that's essentially they're basically extending it to cover software and AI systems. So there is another one that will also capture AI as well. Over on the other side of the pond, we have a number of US state laws coming out around AI. As of yet, there isn't a federal law, but there are, as I said, a number of them jumping up here and there around the states, and a few more in draft as well. One thing I will say, and the biggest tip when it comes to regulatory compliance, because I can see that obviously that's a huge concern for a number of people on this webinar, is if you prescribe to the strictest one, so we would take the EU AI Act, for example, if you go for compliance with that one, especially if you're working, you're in a multi-jurisdictional organization, you will typically be in compliance with the others as well. So just go for the strictest one and ensure you're compliant with that, and then the others will then tend to follow. I noted down in the bottom right corner that there are a number of regulations as well that are popping up in other places as well. So we've got something coming in China, Canada, South Korea, to name three. If you are operating in those markets, it's very important to just keep track of what's happening in those places from a regulation perspective. We're currently in a time period where things are changing rapidly around the world in the space of regulation. One day they announce something's coming in the UK, the following week it's gone. And it's happening all over the world. Things are changing. It's an ever-evolving landscape. So just making sure you're keeping on top and tracking what your compliance requirements are. Now, one thing I will say, one of the biggest tips, and I've put them in key actions at the bottom, and I didn't put them in order, but actually I think the first thing I would recommend that you do is have an AI governance framework. That's step one, because it means that when you are looking to procure an AI system or develop something internally, you already have a process in place that you know that if you follow these steps, X, Y, Z, you're going to be in compliance. So just building and maintaining a framework internally to manage AI-related risks is very, very important, largely because the EU AI Act is risk-based. It takes a risk-based approach. So it categorizes AI systems by prohibited, so you're not allowed to use them at all, by high risk, limited, and minimal risk. So having a risk management framework in relation to AI is very important. Making sure you're conducting those risk assessments. So when you're looking at use cases, and I think I did see something in the chat around looking at the use case and then using that to determine whether you're going to go for it or not, 100% from a risk perspective, you want to look at the use case, have a look, okay, when you look at the EU AI Act classifications, what would it fall into? Is it high risk? Fantastic. If it's high risk, I've got to follow the following steps. If it's limited risk, you've probably got majority of the regulation applies to high risk applications, so you've got fewer requirements. So making sure you're aware of the risks that you're actually sitting on. But just to go back to what Louis said, it's not just about what the EU AI Act says. Those risk assessments can be very helpful to you to identify what other risk assessments need to be done. So it looks like it's high risk for information security. Fantastic. We need to make sure we're reviewing the security controls that organization has before we procure that system. It looks like it could potentially be high risk for data privacy. We need to make sure that, that they have the right measures in place from a privacy perspective. We've got the right clauses in the contract before we share that any data with them and so on. So those risk assessments can actually be very good vehicles to manage all procurement related risks if you're looking from a procurement perspective, but then also internally as well. And then finally, it's just very important to communicate transparently about your AI systems. One thing that is very consistent across regulations around the world is transparency. You need to tell people that you're doing it and that you're using it, especially if there's a risk that it could have an impact on an individual, so a significant impact. And actually operating in this space, pharma tech, healthcare, there could actually be significant risks to individuals. I'm going to pause there, Paul, because I know that we wanted to have, I'm actually really keen as well to hear, from Diana, Louis, Derek, what's it been like navigating regulation in your organizations?
Thank you, Sato. And it wouldn't surprise me if you have 1,000 questions for you post-webinar, as you clearly know what you're talking about here, and it's clearly interesting to everybody. Just before we go to the others, though, an interesting question from Fred Brown, which was, have any regulations actually stopped an AI project at your company? He asked that 10 minutes ago. It made me wonder how cautious or lack of cautious you think that we are being as an industry. And Sato, do you have a view on that before we go to the others?
Yeah, so the whole conversation around innovation versus regulation, it comes up quite a lot. And actually, regulation isn't necessarily in place to stop people from innovating. It's to make sure that you're doing it responsibly. And then in some cases, of course, fairly, depending on the type of system you use. In my experience, I haven't yet seen regulation stop a project necessarily. It just means that rather than just running straight into it, they're actually considering the potential impact that this could have on consumers, on if it's business to business, so reputational risks and so on. Now, the EU AI Act, as I said, does have a number of prohibited uses, but they're actually things that, from an ethics perspective, you really don't want to be doing anyway. So, for example, using it for credit scoring is a fantastic example because there is a potential that, especially with AI, bias is inherent in human beings as well, and using an AI system could potentially perpetuate that. So using that to make actual decisions on whether an individual can take out a mortgage or, get a credit card or whatever could actually have very significant impacts on individuals and their social standing. So that's just an example of one of the prohibited uses. There are a number of others, but provided that your system doesn't actually fall into that category, there's nothing that will prevent you from doing it. You just need to be more careful about how you are doing it, making sure that you're using AI and building AI responsibly. I hope that answers your question, Fred.
Yeah. I know.
May I just make a quick comment to?
It has to be quick, though, Louis. Yeah. Yes. It has to be.
The way I look at all of these regulations and the AI Act, etc., is probably as the best customer experience framework that exists out there. They exist so that customers and the general public is in a good place when we engage with them. If we follow everything, we will be generating a really great customer experience. We won't be abusing of AI. We won't be abusing of the data that's available, etc. So I really see it as a way for us to benefit the customer and generate a great experience. So if we look at it through that lens and ask ourselves those questions, often more than not, we end up in a really good place.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Louis. Words of wisdom as always. I know Sato asked for others, but I need to move on the conversation a little onto other things because time is going incredibly fast. I am going to end the poll and show the results, but I'm not going to have time to read them out because what I want to do is to go to Christine now. Christine, I think you have a quick slide to share. And really, I'm very keen to hear what some of the positive impact is that you and your colleagues have been able to create.
Sure, thank you. And I think the crowd's spoken based on the survey. Understanding what's driving HCP behavior change in real time rose to the top. And when you think about why, you think about our own everyday lives and what we're able to do with things like fitness trackers. A lot of us have fitness trackers. These devices track in real time, giving us our heart rate. How well did we sleep last night? How many steps did we take yesterday? And that type of data is something that people have become accustomed to. So imagine if it was slow, as people talked about, one of the challenges, if it was subjective or if you only got information maybe once a year. How much could we stay on track with our goals? Well, it would probably be challenging. So the question is, why would commercial medical teams operate any differently? And when we look at what we're doing at Advance AI, we are the market leader in helping pharmaceutical companies gain real-time continuous visibility into the execution quality of their marketing and medical strategies, which allows them to move from reactive to proactive. We've worked with 19 pharmaceutical companies across Asia, Europe, North America, and Australia. And with all this experience, we're now able to offer industry benchmarks. In addition, we have progression benchmarks showing the industry rate of improvement over a period of time. And all of this is underpinned by strong subject matter expertise in both commercial and medical, which provides the team's end-to-end support. What makes us unique is our ability to work with pharmaceutical advisory boards, which really help us prioritize our functionality and our new product offerings, which are coming, and that results in a robust roadmap. We're now excited to be able to roll out a pharma-specific sentiment score. So the question is, how does it all work? It's simple and compliant, back to Sato's message, So 82% of HCPs are opting in to allow their face-to-face interactions to be analyzed using a simple app that's downloaded to a representative's device. They have a conversation like normal between the HCP and the field. And once that's submitted, it goes through our AI to look at 3 core areas: scientific content or marketing messages, engagement skills, and interaction outcomes. These insights then flow into an intuitive real-time dashboard, which provides trendline data. Now, our AI is the only field-based solution trained specifically on medical and marketing language, and that ensures accuracy and relevance in the insights that are delivered back to the team. Those real-time dashboards offer visibilities at all levels of the organization cross-functionally, at the aggregate national level, all the way down to an individual representative's view. We offer quarterly business reviews, which support 90-day action planning, ensuring pharmaceutical teams can continuously optimize those strategies. We're also offering strategic interviews, which allow you to understand your team's knowledge, belief, and confidence in your strategy. So I'll leave you with this. If the goal is to have that real-time data and that visibility of your strategy, what decisions could you be making faster if you started now?
Well, Christine, thank you so much. And why don't we get our panel to expand on that exact question? I gather that everyone on our panel is hands-on with this technology. So why don't you guys tell us what it's actually doing for your organizations, and any kind of advice you might have for everyone listening on how to gain similar or better impact. Who wants to go first on that?
So
Please do, Diana. Feels like it's been a while. Please.
So I think it's actually on multiple levels where we see benefits. I think the real difference with any insights we had previously is it's insight on personal level. And then so when you use like this solution with people will see personal insights back. So everyone who wants to grow has the opportunity to find out growing areas, and we've actually seen that even with like you have reps, you have super great reps, you have reps that need a little bit more development, but even if like somebody that already does a really great job, you always have marginal gains. So I think that is what, because it's not like one big thing, on a personal perspective, this really, really adds value. That said, you will always have some people that will not buy in to that because they actually maybe don't want to grow or don't see that opportunity at that moment, and that's fine too. We even saw, and I want to try to make it a little bit real because I saw in the chat also for examples. We saw even people like using it less than really frequent users, even getting better at their selling skills. We uncovered through this, for example, which type of messages, like if you combine certain messages, have the most impact for with our customers. So if you then give that information back, because still several people are using it, also people that use it less frequent will benefit from those insights. So in that sense, like I think Christine, you asked like faster change, faster impact. For us, we see way faster impact and also more individual adoption. And even if it's not everybody, the impact is there. And then maybe on that last point, because I saw that also in the chat, we even did a return on investment calculation and looked like where we really are using this. If it's like, if you improve your selling skills, if you use those messages that we defined, like are most impactful, because that is also the information that you get back. Is your strategy actually working? Not only tick the box. And then we looked at the outcome of the doctors, but we also overlaid our sales data. And we saw actually really an increase, and especially when you looked at like our top users and our bottom 50% users, we saw a difference of 10%. So I think from a return on investment thing, which I think you should also have an eye on when you do these kind of things, it really makes a difference.
Yeah, it sounds like more difference than most other initiatives, put it that way. And Christine mentioned this 82% adoption number from HCP. Did you also find that HCPs were very open to having this?
Yes, we had over 80%, but maybe, so I'm maybe, yeah, I would like to answer, let Derek answer that, because he's really doing this in the field. But for us, we had over 80% and in multiple countries. So yes, they are definitely open to do this.
Well, I also want to hear from Derek, not just on that, but also, Derek, you have a really interesting perspective on the individual versus the company, and I would really like to hear that come across from you. I think it's a really important point.
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. I think going back to a comment that Louis made around maybe the regulation and the compliance and actually the end goal, right? I mean, the end goal is around, you know, developing your team either at an organizational level, but also on a one-to-one level. And I think the way that we positioned this with the teams in Novartis is around, this is essentially a coach in your pocket, right? This is an ability to get real-time insights on the calls that you're doing with your HCPs. And it's there to support their development and actually also to support their managers in their coaching plans with their teams. And actually, to a certain extent, it doesn't matter how well the data correlates between what you see from advanced AI and what you see from maybe more subjective feedback from your manager. Where there's consistency, that's great. Where there's inconsistency, the richness then comes in the conversation and how you then create a development plan off the back of that. So I think we sold this, if you like, as very much an investment in their development, an investment in their capability. And logically, we would then expect that to drive the performance of the business out the other side. And I think that we're starting to see the benefits of that now at an individual level, but then also at an organizational level. As Christine's mentioned, you can then get real-time insights on your marketing campaign, which messages are resonating when delivered, you know, in the right way, which aren't resonating and are not delivering a sort of positive call outcome or a positive sell outcome. And we can start to see that, and we can start to tweak the strategy, dial up different elements of the marketing campaign, because we know exactly where those deliver a positive outcome and where they don't. In terms of HCP adoption, we are well into the 80, potentially 90% HCP adoption. Very little reluctance or reticence from HCPs to have their calls recorded. And of course, they're recorded, but of course they're transcribed very, very quickly and then analysed. We actually don't see any real reluctance on the part of HCPs to participate in these types of interactions. Actually, what we see is more intrigue. We see people actually going, oh, that's interesting. And then you can see them start to think about how HCPs might look to apply AI in their consultations with patients and how they speak potentially to carers. So you start to actually get a lot of intrigue. And I've had some of my team go back to see the same HCPs, and they've asked about the results from the dashboard. What did you see? What's been improving? They actually are very interested in how this technology is helping them advance. So, and then applying it in their world. So we've not really seen a huge amount of HCP reticence to have these interactions recorded. I think HCP consent is a very interesting area and something that we certainly had some in-depth discussions within Novartis about how we would go around HCP consent. But of course, the data is anonymized, the data is aggregate. So in that respect, there's no traceability back to an individual HCP interaction. So we've very much gone down a verbal consent route. We haven't documented anything really to preserve that anonymity, and the data is aggregate anyway, and there's nothing to trace, nothing that we can trace back to that specific HCP interaction anyway. And another thing that's not been mentioned is possibly elements of pharmacovigilance and adverse event reporting, which again, we would expect our teams to do exactly in the same way that they would in a routine call, in a routine interaction, report any adverse events in the way that we would normally expect them to do from a reporting standpoint. So just some practical tips in terms of how we've implemented it, how we've sold it into to our teams, and we're really starting to see either proactively, we're doing some course correction, or reactively seeing the impact of training interventions, for example, that we performed last year, and the feedback from Advanced AI tool is showing that very positive impact on those training interventions. So, we're seeing multiple benefits being realised across our organisation.
Thank you, Derek. And as well as what you've just said there, all really important things, the bit that I also recall from our previous conversation is how ensuring that this is a tool for the rep on the front line and is ironically not prioritized as a metric to use company-wide is what drives so much of the adoption, which I thought was a really interesting thing. Of course, you all listening as managers and as leaders will want to consolidate, but you have to leave this in the hands of the person on the front line. Is that right?
Absolutely, Paul. The one thing I would add to that as well is we were very clear that we would not use the output of this tool for performance management. So it was never going to be part of an HR process. This was all about driving individual capability and development, and it was not going to be used for performance management, which I think is a really important distinction when you're trying to adopt technology such as Advanced AI.
Yeah. So a poll question is on the side, as you can see, but I want to go to Louis, because Louis, I know you have been really hands-on with the scaling in particular, and that was something our audience wanted to hear more about. So would love to hear your thoughts and reaction to Christine's question and your thoughts on.
Very similar perspectives. I think you don't want to position this as an assessment tool or metrics. To Derek's last point, we went one step further, and we actually, the only individual that can see his or her individual data is the sales rep. So not even the district sales manager has access to his or her team's individual data. District sales manager upwards only see aggregated data. At the end of the day, what they want to know and see and understand is the collective trends and where they can intervene. So we position it, just as Derek said, as a coaching tool. It also helps the coaching relationship between the sales rep and the DSM, because this tells you what is happening, right? Without much subjectivity. It is what it is. And we had initially the point from some DS as well, is this going to replace me? No, because it only tells you what is happening. Then the real art and the expertise of the DSM is in the coaching of how to overcome and address what is happening. And that's where that relationship gets maximized, because instead of the DSM spending as much time trying to identify what is happening, that is already in the dashboard, and they can spend their time on the actual coaching. So that's a real plus. We will start scaling up. So I'm assuming that we will move into a tougher territory where you start to get spreading out to, you'll have the early adopters, you'll have the naysayers, and you'll have those guys that as soon as you speak about it will run in the opposite direction. So I'm anticipating that that will be it. Having said that, the way we did the pilot, and I'm assuming we will want to do the same thing, is who wants to participate? In these new things, it's very important to work with those guys that have the door open for you, because I truly believe as this gets positioned as coaching, and the detractors see the guys that jump on this early, seeing improved performance, seeing improved outcomes, they will ask for it as well. So that's how we will probably take this on. The last thing I'd like to say, just a quick comment, is we haven't seen the level acceptance that both Diane and Derek mentioned, but I think that was because we've just done an 8-week pilot, and in 8 weeks, folks tend to go to the same customer multiple times because I'm going to my friend and I'll ask once, twice, and 10 times. And after 2 times, the customer says, hey, I'm your friend, so I can tell you go away. So I think that's part of it. The other point is just in AI in general, especially AI in Salesforce and customer engagement related things. We speak a lot about real-time data, and I know that's great, but there's only so much real-time data that we can react to, right? I don't think most of the organizations are set up in a way to be able to get data every day and adjust to what the data is saying every day. So I would just be cautious about that level of optimism with real-time data. It's a great selling proposition, but we aren't set up to adjust on a day-by-day basis. So I would look at 60, 90-day action plans. How can you address what the data is telling you from a trend perspective rather than it's gone up a percentage point, it's gone down half a percentage point. So I'd just be cautious of that real-time data element. But of course, way ahead of getting it only once a year during a month's outcome, and then you have the next 10 months or 11 to implement, for sure.
So Louis, I know you say that you are on a growth journey with this technology, but just before we come off you, and unfortunately we've not got long left, but I would love to just hear what kind of impact you are seeing or what you're expecting over the coming period from putting this into place. And
I think irrespective of what resistance we will face, very quickly, this is the new norm. I think whether it is this approach, a slightly different approach, this is here to stay. I don't see much of a possibility to implement old methods where you have where you accompany the sales rep, you take notes, you do your reports, you come back. I think the best we can do is accept it. It's going to be less painful if we do, and find a way to implement it, because it will not go away. This will be the new norm.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, guys. Time flies. We've got 2 minutes left. I'm very happy to hear if you had to wave a magic wand in your organization and see this implementation through, any final comment on that? But unfortunately, you can only share 1 sentence each in order to hit the time limit that we have on here. So if anyone has a final, if there's one thing I would do, it would be this advice for our audience, then that would be very welcome. There's one final poll on the next steps coming up as well. So thank you.
From my side, the one thing to do is continue to reinforce that people are your main asset.
Okay, so just because we're focusing on technology does not mean that we are any less humanist than we might have been before. I like that. Anyone else?
I think the bit for me would be start to embed this as business as usual and just get into the way of using this technology to drive performance. I'm
hearing that really there is no point in sitting on the sidelines here from all of you. So that's interesting, and it's good to hear that even as non-technologists, all of you, you're saying that. Diana?
Yes, I think echoing what both Louis and Derek say, your people are the most important asset we have actually in a company, and these type of things actually help them and show that. And I think it's like, just keep that in mind and reinforce that, and you will see results, and people will embrace it. I'm sure of it.
So it's complete opposite of what everyone fears, that the robots are taking over. This is very much keeping the humans in business. Okay, I love it. Christine Sete, you've got a few seconds.
I'll be super quick then. So I would just say and reiterate risk awareness, management, transparency, being honest about what you're doing with AI, and then also just making sure that you have the processes in place to manage the risks related to it.
Yeah, and just combining the two is just as Louis said, is we're not going back, we're just going forward. So let's bring the people along the journey and make the change now.
Okay, amazing. Now, that hour went super fast. So my promise to you is that we will actually attempt to answer some of these questions offline and get back to you. Panel, I haven't asked you prior, but obviously if you are willing to have a a conversation and help get some of these answers answered and put that down on paper, then I would be most grateful. And what that means, audience, is if there are any outstanding questions that you have and we didn't get time to address, I will hold this open for another couple of minutes, this window. Write down your questions. It is not too late. They will get answered. And while you're doing that, of course, I want to say a massive thank you, obviously, to our panelists for being willing to share and give energy and ideas and spirit to pushing our industry forwards and being so willing to help other organizations stay on that journey. Sato, your regulatory expertise, clearly unparalleled, really, really appreciated. Christine, to you and your colleagues for being such fantastic people to work with at Advanced AI. I very much recommend everybody takes a closer look if you haven't already. And of course, to everyone listening in, especially those of you who are active in the chat window and the polls, lots of really interesting information, which we would love to be able to share post-event as well. Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure. Good luck. You don't need it. You've got wonderful partners in this very room that can help you on that journey. And I look forward to seeing you at a future webinar and a future conversation. If you've got any more ideas for what you want to talk about next, put that down in the chat window as well. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day. Good luck.